stuck at 12 degrees. Cloudy skies, AM 650, KGAB radio. So as you heard, County Commissioner Linda Heath has slipped into the studio here because apparently she has something out there that needs to be cleared up and clarified, and it has to do with oil, and I haven't heard this story yet. Let me get that a little bit closer to you there. What happened?
Well, we have been getting several comments from the public about energy traffic out on County Road 138, Campstool Road 207. Yesterday they added 203 to the mix. I wanted to share a post that was on social media. It's probably a little briefer than what we were getting in our emails, but I think it covers it. This is a school bus driver out in Laramie County School District number 2 who is writing this. She says, I witnessed a near miss at morning routes yesterday, which would have been Tuesday, that included an elementary student and an oil field employee driving much too fast, but thankfully everything ended okay. Yesterday left my stomach in knots. I've cried tears of gratitude, but I still cannot shake the what ifs that could have been of such consequences. Hug your kids. It can change in a blink of an eye. The county roads out here are not safe right now for our kids. They are not safe for me driving the bus. They are not safe for those living on them. This heavy oil field traffic has our county roads saturated in drivers not paying attention as they are traveling to work. Drivers are going too fast, not adhering to traffic laws, and are in rigs far too big to be conveying on these small roads. Now, I'm not bringing up the topic of the oil industry. For one, it's my family's livelihood, and I'm proud to live in a state rich in natural resources. The topic at hand is that we are living on roads covered in drivers that are not driving safely, and we do not have the help we desperately need. Our county sheriff's department is understaffed, so we are not getting patrol vehicles out here to regulate the laws on our county roads. My post is a plea to my Facebook friends, again, this was on social media, to please contact your county commissioners and tell them of the conditions on our residential county roads due to oil field traffic. Lastly, if your kids ride the bus out here or elsewhere for that matter, be aware of their surroundings. Make sure they are waiting off the main roads or in a vehicle, and especially that they are looking for other traffic to stop completely before going to the bus. I teach this to the kids that I drive, but they need to hear it from you too. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit is some of the actions that have been taken by the county, some of the work that's being done by EOG in this particular area as far as traffic control is concerned, what the situation is with this, and make people aware that it's not just the energy traffic out there that's causing issues, it's also the residential traffic. We've got a lot of more traffic out on those roads. We've had, since the last oil exploration began out there in that area, we've had 2 additional subdivisions that have been built out. There's another one that's pretty close to being finished. And I just wanted to address some of those issues here this morning with the callers.
Okay, speaking of callers, let's go to the first one. This is Glenn. Who's on the phone?
That's Duncan. I'm sorry to call back. I still live in Carpenter, and it's not just the oil field traffic. It's these guys avoiding the way stations coming down from Albin using Highway 213 and 214. We're talking hay haulers, grain haulers, and all kinds of other stuff you could possibly imagine. And when those guys go by you on that highway out here by Carpenter, you feel it. And they don't have any regard for the people that live out here. They could care less. The only thing they're interested in is making their money and screw everybody else.
Okay, so let's take a look at it. You're right, more residential areas, and then we got more trucks, as he's saying, too, different kinds out there as well. So do we have the kind of coverage we need with deputies? Are we understaffed with that?
We are understaffed with our deputies. The roads that he's speaking about will be monitored by State Highway Patrol, and they are having the same issues. Law enforcement nationwide is having a terrible time recruiting new officers, whether it's your sheriff's departments or your local or state law enforcement agencies. the coverage that's been in the media about, officer shootings, officer-involved shootings, and all of the shootings that have, where people have just up and for some reason decided to shoot an officer have not helped. The younger generation is not seeing law enforcement as a viable career. It's a tough one. I mean, you see people on their worst days, and sometimes you're the cause of it. But, when you're writing the tickets, they kind of get upset.
Sure. Okay.
So, that is an issue. Now, back to this particular issue here, since we've talked about the coverage of law enforcement, in the current budget for the county commissioners did approve the hiring of 4 new deputies to be directed to the rural areas to increase the coverage. That being said, the nature of the coverage or the area that is covered, they really prefer to get some experienced deputies out there. These men and women are out there patrolling by themselves.
Huge area.
Huge area. Well, we have 1,500 miles of county road, and most of it, all of it, really, for the most part, is out in the eastern part of the county, where all the oil development is going on. So, and just the process, and I don't know whether the public is aware of this, there's a pretty rigorous process just to even be hired. You've got a written test, you've got a psychological test, you have there's a physical test that goes with it. And then if you are hired, then you have about a month and a half to 2 months that you end up spending up in Douglas at Law Enforcement Academy. Yeah. So really from the time that a deputy or any of the law enforcements, even the CPD, is hired, it takes 4 to 6 months, depending on what you're being hired to do, whether it's detention or whether it's working in as a patrolman. It takes 4 to 6 months just to get them trained. And then they don't just turn them out on the streets and say, go do your job. Experience. They usually have them ride with someone else for another 6 months. So you're looking at from time of hire to about a year before these guys are out on the road by themselves. So it's a very lengthy process. They go through constitutional law up at Douglas, the shooting training, all of the things that you would imagine that they would be required to go through. That's part of what that Law Enforcement Academy is about. So there is quite a delay in getting those officers out there unless you can hire somebody with some experience. Right. And that's where the competition comes from. CPD, sheriff's deputies, sheriff's department, Wyoming Highway Patrol, we're all competing for the same pool of people. And it's getting increasingly smaller. So it is a challenge to get those folks out on the road and patrolling. EOG has been very good about working with us. They've got one road that they pretty much have taken over the maintenance of while they're doing some development on. The road that probably has been impacted the most is County Road 138 in Campstool. This road, 138, is a north-south road that goes over some pretty hilly terrain. It's narrow. It doesn't have shoulders on it. Campstool doesn't either, but it is paved all the way through to Chalk Bluffs Road, which is south and east of Cheyenne. What has happened in years past, we had a partnership with EOG and Anadarko to get that Campstool Road in particular paved. But the money wasn't there to widen it at the time. So now we have 2 lanes of traffic with no shoulders. We've got some relatively deep bar ditches on either side. So people really don't want to pull over very far. And, big wide trucks that, they're moving oil rigs, they're moving all of the equipment that goes with it. It comes in pieces. It's on semis. They do have flag cars out ahead of these rigs when they're moving. But when you're looking at the increased amount of residential traffic, in addition to the energy traffic, on a road that's narrow, you can see what we're building up to. It's a mess. We are at the county level looking at doing some work on some of these roads, not just 138 in Campstool, but also the Hillsdale Road south to 30, Highway 30, and then Road 142, which is north of Hillsdale up to 85. Both of these roads are paved, and they are getting a lot of energy development traffic, and so we're seeing a lot of breakup in the pavement. The solution on 138 in Campstool is not going to happen overnight because we've got to identify funding. We've got to identify, get the cost estimates out there so that we can even begin to determine what our funding needs are going to be for this. What it's going to mean, too, is some of the other road maintenance that we would be doing in the county on a regular basis without the oil traffic is probably going to be delayed in order to fix these issues on those roads that I mentioned.
Can we talk with the companies to maybe get a little more help to slow it down?
We actually have been working with them, and I'll fill you in. I think we've got a call coming in, and I'll take that.
See, she takes over as the host of the show already. She just this is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Good morning, Glenn. This is Chris from
Yes,
Cheyenne.
sir. Yes, sir.
Hey, I brought this up to one of the councilmen a while back, but Laramie County has a lot of land, and so does the city. And I had proposed that if the city and the county were to go together and buy a crusher, they could make or dig out the materials, road base and gravel and the other things, and then contract with one of the batch plants here in town, and supply the material and see what kind of cost break you could get on that. And then certainly it would be a lot cheaper to maintain these roads and repair these roads. I think it's something worth looking at. I mean, we do have the Belvoir Ranch out there that really we're not doing much with, but if we could get the sand and gravel out of there and make a deal, we might be able to do things a lot cheaper.
All right. What do you think?
Well, I kind of like part of the idea. There again, it's not going to be a quick fix. The county does have their own gravel pit, and we do our own mix for our gravel roads as far as what type of gravel and how we mix it with sand and such in order to maintain our gravel roads. As far as the city using part of the Belvoir, you'd have to talk to them. I don't know. They're putting windmills out there now for a wind farm, so, and wanting to use it for recreation. I'm not sure how a gravel pit's going to work out there. But the other thing is just the permitting process to get a gravel pit through DEQ is rather lengthy. I'm not making excuses. This is a possibility. And I don't know what kind of a break that we could get. Oil prices are going to impact the cost of asphalt. Oil prices go up, asphalt goes up.
Let me go back real quick to talking to and working with some of these companies out there just to get their drivers to slow it down at least. Not just the safety issue, but even the breakup of the road would be helpful.
Well, what we're finding, EOG in particular has been very proactive. They've been very responsive to us. There are tracking devices on their trucks. They've worked with and met with their subcontractors, and there is a no-tolerance policy for traffic safety violations. We've said for a long time, if the residents can get the number on the truck, a license plate number or the name of the truck, note a time of day, the location that you saw this truck, it will make it a lot easier for them to look through their tracking records and find out who the driver was. You can provide that information to the county commissioners. You can call the Public Works Department, leave that message with them, and we will contact our individuals that we have access to through the energy companies, whether it's EOG, Hellas, Samson, Kaiser Francis, any of those companies. And like I said, they've got a zero tolerance for that. And I know that EOG has reached out, at least to me anyway, and asked for the name of the transportation director over in School District number 2 to identify the school routes, to find out just what time those buses are moving through those areas so that maybe they can control the traffic at that point in time and keep those trucks off of the road. Make their drivers aware if they can't keep them off the road, just make them exceptionally aware that, this is a school bus route. There are some opportunities and possibilities out there of maybe doing some bus pullouts, but that means we've got to acquire the land and construct the pullouts, finding the best places to do those. But there again, we've had a couple of them. One the school district abandoned. One, the neighbors complained about the oil trucks using that pullout when the school buses weren't there, so it got closed.
Yeah. Every time you find one solution, two more problems pop. Okay, so what other concerns do you have out there, or solutions?
Well, and some of it's just, an update of the things that are going on. It's not that the commissioners are ignoring this issue. It's not that the oil companies are ignoring this issue. We're seeing probably more complaints coming out of the area where EOG is developing right now, just because of the concentration of the residential subdivisions that are out there. I really, truly encourage everybody to be aware of what's going on around you. Watch out for other drivers. Watch out for yourself. Obey those traffic laws. Be defensive in your driving. That doesn't mean be aggressive and honk your horn and
that's not defensive.
Sign language. No, yeah. This is allow for plenty of space between you and the other vehicle. Use your turn signals. They're there for a reason. They're not just a red decoration on the back of your car or whatever. Be very proactive with your driving. We did a partnership with Samson Energy this last year, and we're able to widen Iron Mountain Road. It's much safer now than it was. Granted, we have a lot of truck traffic up on that road right now because of the development of energy that Samson Energy is doing up there. But the road is much safer because it is wider right now, and there is room to pull over when those rigs are coming through. Everybody has a tendency to have a lead foot. Mm-hmm. And
especially when you're driving great distances like that.
So. We all need to slow down.
This is Glenn, who's on the phone.
Hey, this is Lee. You know what I find conspicuous in its absence in this discussion? Where's the sheriff's office? Isn't it their job to enforce traffic laws?
We did talk about that earlier, but let's do that again.
Just to highlight what the sheriff's office is doing, they have 2 or 3 deputies that are patrolling in that area.
For how much roadway? Over
we have
1,000?
1,500 miles of roadway that the county has.
2 guys.
Basically 2 guys, and they aren't working 24 hours a day. I mean, they are on call. And it's tough, and we're unable to get the guys hired and trained fast enough in order to increase the deputies out there. We have additional positions that have been authorized, and as of yet, I don't believe that they have been filled. We've got to get some younger deputies that can patrol in here closer to Cheyenne and put our more experienced deputies out there on those rural areas. Until that happens, when it takes us about a year to get all of that training completed from the day of hire to get these guys on the road, then it is going to be rather dicey. In fact, it's kind of interesting because in talking to the sheriff's department, they have had patrol units out there on the roads monitoring the traffic, and they've been writing tickets to the local traffic because the oil companies are paying attention to the speed limits.
Uh-huh.
Obviously, there are still some that have got a little heavy foot in those trucks, but most of their tickets have been written to the local traffic.
Okay. So there is an idea. You mentioned this a little earlier, but I'll build on a little bit. So if you do see someone being reckless or just too fast, well, you can go ahead and get a license number, something, and just let them know. I mean, let the police, whatever, know, watch out for this. It's a little bit harder to do if you're talking about a citizen and there's no evidence, as opposed to a truck driver where he has that 1-800 how's my driving on the back, and you can call that number. But still, though, that's for the people out there who are not driving too fast or reckless, to at least be able to say or do something to the people who are would help. It's extra eyes and ears for the police.
Well, and that does help. And, granted, when you get a traffic ticket, if you're a residential driver, it's not one of these things they're going to come knocking on your door and at X hour during the day you were identified as speeding or driving recklessly.
Yeah, that's not going to work.
It's going to be the number of complaints that will probably drive the deputies to go back out there and spend a little more time on that patrol. But, we've got oil development happening down around Carpenter. We've got oil development, of course, out in the Campstool Road area, Chalk Bluffs. And then when you go up on 85 between the Albin and Burns area, kind of a small triangle up there, we've got oil development going on up there, and also north of Cheyenne. And, we're experiencing something that none of the other counties in the state really have experienced. Our oil development is happening close to residential subdivisions. And so there is added residential traffic where these trucks are driving and running on the roads. That's part of what precipitated the work that we did on Iron Mountain Road, and we partnered with Samson Energy in order to get that road paved and get it widened. So, there has been cooperation between the county and the oil companies in order to get some work done, but it takes time. And, there again, the price of oil goes up. Mm-hmm. They've got a little more money to work with, and they're a little more inclined to help do those things.
All right. Concerns or ideas, where do they get a hold of you? Or just the county, for that matter?
You can call the county commissioner's offices at 633-6420 and leave a message for any of the commissioners. You can go to the county webpage and access our email information and send us an email, or you can send it to commissioners@laramiecounty.com, and that goes to our administrative assistant, and she will get it out to a particular commissioner or to all of us at that point in time.
Okay. Any meetings coming up on this at all?
We have a quarterly meeting coming up, and I neglected to look at the calendar real quick. Let's see if I can find it. I believe it's the end of March.
And that's probably not a bad idea, again, to get your ideas together and then go ahead and attend the meeting, or at least send something to the meeting that can be read anyway if you can't attend it. Go ahead.
The meeting is scheduled for March 18th, which is a Monday, from 5:30 to 7, and that will be up in the commissioners' boardroom where we have our regular meetings during the month. We have representatives that will come in from the oil companies. Our public works folks will be there. Sheriff's Department is there. Oil and Gas Commission often sends representatives down to hear the comments and provide information. It's basically just an information sharing meeting, and we do take public comment as well at that time. So, the public is welcome to come in. There have been a lot of changes in how fracking is done. The water consumption is not what it used to be, and part of the reason that we're seeing so much of the traffic for the prolonged length of time is that instead of having a well every half mile or mile, we have oil pads that are putting down 4, 5, 6, 8. Some of them are permitted for 13 wells in these pads. And so the number of pads are down. The number of wells on the pads have increased. And so the companies are on those pads working and developing that energy for longer periods of time, which means that the traffic volumes are higher for a longer period of time. Laramie County is experiencing something as far as energy development that we have never experienced before. We're not dealing with jackrabbits and antelope.
Yeah.
We're dealing with a lot of residential traffic, and yes, we are concerned about the safety, not only of our drivers on the road, but also of the kids that are boarding buses. And we're trying to, the energy companies are trying to identify those routes and make safety precautions. Maybe we'll get some additional bus pullouts, but there again, we've got, hurdles to cross there. And it's not like we're not paying attention to it. We know that it exists and trying to find the best solution. And, we're willing to take comments from the public, work together to solve this problem.
All right. Thank you for coming in.